Hello, good evening, and welcome everybody to our first LinkedIn Live. And the topic, I'm sure, is something all of you are going to be very interested in because that's all that I see on my WhatsApp, LinkedIn feed, everywhere else. So, the idea of the LinkedIn Live today is actually to figure out what are people actually doing because otherwise it's a bit like, everybody's talking about it, everybody says, oh, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, but it's hard to find people who are actually doing something on the ground. So we have great company for this LinkedIn Live. I have Ashish Tiwari and Sanjay Mehta to join me, and they're going to share a little bit about what's really happening on the ground in the industry in terms of using AI. And then we're also going to talk about an aspect that is very close to all our hearts, which is this going to lift our job or are we going to lose our job? So that's the next one. So with this, I'd like to see Ashish and Sanjay on stage with me.
Hey Jesse,
Hi, hi
hi
everyone.
Sanjay.
Hi Ashish, hi Josie.
Hi.
Hi.
And I think we have a lot of people out there. And maybe I think combined, we have around 100 years of work experience, which may or may not be the greatest of things to talk about, the latest thing on the block. But sometimes, it also feels like the gold rush days of 2000 when you were told that, if you can't do e commerce, you're dead. And it was also the time when they told us that, oh, a phone is never going to replace a camera. Oh, a phone is never going to replace the radio. Oh, a phone is never, all of that. You heard that. And now it's just like 25 years later, and phone has replaced everything. So, and e commerce, if you don't do it, you're now dead. So, I think AI is kind of at that cusp. So, with no further ado, I'm going to first ask you, Ashish, to share a little bit about, are you using AI or is it just a myth that you are?
I think Jesse, thanks. That's a great question. I think if I look at the business today, the kind of a business I am into, I mean, just to give you a sense, I am into a lending business. Okay, we give out personal loans and cash loans and the loans for buying out small home appliances, mobile phones, and things like that. And we get almost like some 60, 70,000 applications every day. Okay, and the number can go up to as high as a lakh per day. Now, with that kind of a rush coming in, it's virtually impossible and to make a decision in the runtime if it was not for systems to perform. So, I mean, we use AI at a massive scale, both in terms of making decisioning. Then it comes once you have onboarded a customer, it's all about how do you do cross sell, upsell, what kind of a personalization can you drive, both in terms of communication as well as in terms of portfolio management, and we generate enormous amount of data, and there is where I think the AI and ML and all these juggernaut of entire thing performs really really well if you are able to define it in your systems. That's one part at the back end of the uh, behind the wall. At the front end, it's about doing that engagement, creating content in mass at scale to be able to, I mean, when these guys have done those transactions, now people also want to know what is happening with their prepayment, post payment, XY. There are so many queries which are coming in. I mean, I have a live base of more than almost about some 16, 18 million customers. Now, these customers need to be engaged. Who to offer what? The recommendation engine. When you come in and you try and check out your offer, that generation of that offer in a real time basis multiple parameters. All that is done today by with the AI. So I think as you very rightly said, there is no going back from the era you have walked into. It's only about how do you deploy it in your business, and how are you being able to use this to create value for all your stakeholders. Yep. Jesse, am I audible?
No, you are.
Ah, okay. Sorry. Yeah, so I was saying it's all about how do you create value for your stakeholders, and I think that's where we use we were using. I mean, while today AI is becoming a buzzword because of its en masse available for end users and because of all this generation possibilities which have happened. I think some of the businesses have been using it for a very very long time. Okay, it's not that it is something new. The only newness which has happened is now it is a the technology has been shifted into a form factor that is available for a common man just on a click or just on the browser.
Okay,
So
so
that's
Ashish, you describing yourself as common man may be a little bit of a stretch. But I think I get what you're saying, right? All of us have tried playing around with a Canva or a Chat GPT or Perplexity. And I think what I'm hearing you say is if you've got tons of data, just maybe 4 years ago, you'd have needed a data specialist to analyze that kind of data. Now you might be able to do it yourself.
uh, I would say that today the form factor of the work has been changing. Okay, say 5 years back, I would need to deploy a data scientist to do a lot of grunt work first, a lot of data cleaning, putting it together in a structured format, creation of, and then insight mining. Today, I think those guys focus on insights. The grunt work can be outsourced to a computer, to an algorithm, because if you have any pattern in the entire data which is flowing in, then I think you can train a system to do all the grunt work, and then you can deploy. The humans can actually focus on what produces the maximum amount of value. It's the same thing when computers came or when the automation era came. Okay, earlier we were weaving clothes by our own hands. Now machines weave the clothes, so you can focus on designing part of it, how to design it, what is most comfortable, which weather to wear what, and things like that. I think that's the change which is happening around. And yeah, on that note, must I say, we might have 100 years of collective experience, but I think all of us are as novice as anybody else.
Oh, absolutely. This is the fun part. So I'm going to ask Sanjay. Um, you know, I think we would have started working when there were actual illustrators making the designs and sticking it on paper and all of that. And today, I think advertising has changed so much, communication has changed so much, and yet I think it's also the volume has expanded because now the expectation is that it's not mass, it's actually customized. So maybe a quick overview of how are you seeing AI play out in that industry?
Yeah, sure, JC. So while I do, of course, come in from the advertising side of the business, I'm interestingly at a point of time in my career where I'm at the edge. I'm kind of almost exiting, and so my viewpoint today is more as from the sidelines with the luxury of being able to comment on the way things are with the added exposure of having been in the industry and seen what's been happening. So at the outset, what I wanted to say is that I've been in, so to say, digital per se since the time internet came into India. Literally, that was the time when we started our first startup way back in '98. And having been through that long 25 years and having seen the evolution of the space of technology and the more and more different things that keep coming every day, literally, uh, there have been many things over the years that have impressed in terms of the technological impact, etc. But very honestly, none of those were of the kind which made me get up from the chair and say, "Oh my God, this is it. This is going to be like this game changer, which is going to change the way we live, etc." And I include everything. I include blockchain. I include, crypto and NFTs and AR, VR, mixed reality, everything. They've all been interesting. They've all had their own role to play, but until generative AI came about, I mean, there was nothing else previous which made me feel that, oh, I must go and find a startup to invest in this space, or I must learn something because I'll be left out. It was interesting. It was going to be great. But with Gen AI, that's the kind of, in some sense, anxiety, in some sense, concern, in some sense, excitement that I see. And from the very beginning, from the early days of Chat GPT to the mid journeys to Canva, and like and whatever new, the co-pilots and Devin and Sora and all kinds of things that we are seeing, it is literally every day something different, something even more interesting, uh, game changing seems to be coming our way. Just yesterday, I mean, we had this 2 hour long keynote by Jensen on of NVIDIA, and talking about how like Moore's law is like history now, and like in AI computing power in GPU has gone up 1,000 times in the last 8 years, etc. So you don't even know what's coming next. I mean, it's a space where you're literally like, you get up in the next morning and you say, okay, what else has happened tonight, is how we're seeing. So given all that, uh, the industry, advertising, marketing, I mean, we're seeing changes everywhere, right? So at the outset, of course, we all know that it's not traditional advertising and marketing anymore. Technology is anyway integrated deep into the marketing world. So whatever is impacting core advertising areas, whether it's the creative, whether it's copy, whether it's all of video, as well as whatever is impacting technology and software development and marketing automation and personalization, all of those spaces are literally getting impacted by Gen AI. And A, because you're getting efficiency, B, your competition is doing it. C, there is price pressures. If you don't do it, you're not going to be able to meet the target pricing your clients want to see. It's all forcing you to adopt as much of it as you can, including from a pure administrative space. I mean, from recruiting better to writing better emails to your clients and everything in between, besides the actual use in the industry itself, is happening. And yes, there are some of these concerns about, legality and copyright and all that. But I think it's all just a matter of time. I mean, you can't stop a technology whose time has come. You can't rein this in. And if there are some of these hurdles today, we will find a way to overcome them. And it's going to be increasing use. And it's got to be very, very agile to keep adapting to the change. And I think that's what's going to be the necessity as we go along in coming days.
So I think, so there's a question that's come up saying that Elon Musk says it will overcome or overtake human intelligence. Um, I think it will, of course, because it's completely scalable, unlike the individual brain. So and it's interconnected, which is the other part. Which brings us to an interesting topic, which is what happens to the humans in that case, right? And I have a couple of like viewpoints on this. One is that our expectations go up because of this technology. So as a consumer, I'm hoping that everything starts to become personalized. So when you go to an old house, like any house that's around 100 years old, one of the first things we see is that they have a tiny cupboard which may have held maybe 4 to 5 outfits at most. And that's for the whole family, pretty much just one wardrobe. And that's because in those days that, you know, clothing was a significant part of your income. Similarly, if you went to a rich man's house, they had a chair, but not everybody could afford a chair. You made do with, the cots and the charpoys and the whatevers. As you rise and as you have capability to produce more, everybody gets one of these so-called luxury items becomes an essential. And so in the past, if someone wrote a story for you or a movie for you, you were a very special person. But today, the algorithm works at the level of customizing your preferences. But tomorrow, it could be, oh, she really liked Grey's Anatomy. Let me make a whole show for her with, her storyline, her actresses, her everything. And within like just 3 months of that, I would probably be like, I can't possibly watch a show made for other people. That is so, antique. So I think proliferation would ensure that more stuff gets produced. I'm not commenting on what that does for the environment, but the other side I also am seeing is that my expectations of quality start to rise. So I don't want mediocre anymore. So I open it up to Ashish, Sanjay, who'd like to talk a bit about, as bosses, as senior people, are your expectations changing of the humans that work with you?
You see, I think, let me just comment on what you said about Elon Musk. I think, see, when you say human intelligence, there are multiple parts and factors to that. Okay, and one of that is creativity and empathy. I mean, can AI be made to develop that? It certainly can. I'm sure about it. But the singularity moment, which we say when at the time when you kind of start surpassing, I don't know if that can be calculated so easily. So that's where I think, and it sounds very, very similar. It reminds me, and I'm sure some of us can connect to that. It reminds me of the same kind of a conversations which were happening when computers were new. That computers will eat away everything else what humans will do. And I think we passed that era. We kind of went past that and we came back and said that no, I think humans started doing something very different. It made us more efficient. Our nature of jobs changed. Our interaction with the world changed. I mean, think about it. 2 years back, 3 years back, when pandemic hit, everybody was like, oh, now you can do work from home, you can eat at home, sit at home, exercise at home, work from home, conferences at home, everything is on a computer. So why would people move out? The flights are going full today, airports are busier than ever, trains are busier, buses are full, because of we we failed on one thing, that humans need connections, and I am unsure if you can foster that in a AI led world. Now coming back on the expectations from the workforce, as I said initially, what you are seeing with every new technology coming in, very very rightly you said, number one, personalization, cost of making something has to, I mean, it has to impact that, it has to make it for me. What we were calling earlier, if you recall, we have been talking about it for years now, that make it for me for the moment I am into. I think today the technology empowers you to do that. It empowers you to know much more about your consumers, to know the market you are serving better, and to use your whatever knowledge base you have created over a period of time. And very funny thing, I was just looking at something, and I was kind of playing around with chat gpt just to train a bot to talk like me. So you can ask it questions and it will probably 80% of it will be answered the way I would probably answer. But it's all about that, if I follow a pattern. One thing about humans, they don't follow patterns, they keep evolving about patterns. And AI, that's where I think the differentiation starts. So you would expect your people to be focused a lot more about creativity, to be able to do, to put that different overlay of empathy, to put the intelligence and insights what you gather as human to human connections, and to be able to come out with something which is not only patronized but experimental. I mean, think about it. You can be in a driverless car and you can expect it to drive you from point A to point B. But would you trust a robot to care for your sick baby? It might give medicine on time, it might give reminders on time, but can the pat from a robot be same as a pat from the mother or a father? And that's where I think the work differentiation, the connection differentiation, the 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 overall empathy and trust, like you very rightly said, that differentiation comes in, and that's what you would see people expecting from their teams. That's what I think.
Okay.
Totally. I mean, robot can do everything except love.
If I may add to your question, Jesse, so the first part about the whole Elon Musk analogy, or whether AI can be like human, I think it's not just a question of a perception or an idea. There is this whole idea or a concept called the Turing test, right? And the Turing test is about how close a machine is mimicking, or doing as good. Can you distinguish machine from a human? And in a lot of these AI based experiments, the AI engine has proven to be not decipherable from a human, and in that sense, the Turing test has already been passed in many ways by AI. So, and it will only get sharper and better. So that's just one part of it. But the other way, from a human perspective, if you look at it, like, where is generative AI performing the best? It performs the best where there is this enormous amount of data to learn from and to figure the patterns, the whole large language model, etc. So if somebody is doing an average job, which means a lot of people are doing that, that makes it the easiest to learn and adapt and replace or make you redundant. Whereas if you as a human are doing that, whether it's a creative task or something very unique or something differentiated, there's a less likelihood, or relatively less likelihood, of you getting replaced easily, because that's where you bring in your unique differentiation, which has not become a decipherable pattern which the AI engine is mimicking at this point. So which is why the lower end of the jobs, I mean, we are getting into the jobs part, which maybe is coming a little later, but I mean, the point is that the average is going to get redundant the fastest. And so when you talk about humans, if you bring in differentiation, if you bring in that empathy, if you bring in that personalization in the way you perform, there is a good chance that you stand out and you still remain relevant in the scheme of things, as against just doing a very typical job, which is an average effort.
You're absolutely right. And I think all of us now, like I said, our expectations are rising. And it's like with all of this, we are still struggling to get some basic things done. Like you want to cancel a flight with Expedia, I spent 30 minutes on the phone today. Why is it that hard? What in that process is so hard that I need 30 minutes on a phone? You cannot do it on the app. So I think our expectations are rising that people will show the empathy. Again, it was simple stuff. Why do I have to be online for 30 minutes? You could have just called me back if you needed clarifications, because they just kept saying, stay on hold, stay on hold. I'm just confirming, I'm just confirming. That was a vast majority of the call. Um, it would have been nice if they asked, are you busy? Do you have something else to do? Why don't I call you back? A little bit of human empathy, right? To ask that question that is not in your flow chart. So you're right in that that's the only differentiator, and that's a battle we've been having for years. It is basically, does the person who's doing the process, is he empowered or she empowered to make a difference and be human? And now people are actually going to pay a premium for a process that allows humans to be actually human, right? I mean, we're all grateful to the Uber driver who shows a sign of humanity. You're so excited, right? So similarly, we're going to start, and you give him the 5-star rating because he gave you a glass of water, or he waited 3 minutes, or he helped your aged mother into the car instead of saying, I have to go, I have to go, I have to go. So you're right in that the humanness is what, but you mentioned that the average is really going to struggle. So that's where I not sure, because there was a time when, like, your ability to speak or write English was your key differentiator, and there was an actual, like, a tax if you couldn't, premium if your English was good. um, but now with all of these tools, as long as you can communicate, your English can look really nice because you just run it through, chat or whatever. And the tools are getting better and better every day. So I could be now, so I think it really helps if I had one area that was holding me back. Like, I'm really good at something, but I can't do research, or I'm really good at ideation, but I could not create. I think AI could step in and help me rise from the average into someone who's really good. What do you guys think?
So Jesse, I think I kind of agree with you. I think the average will rise. So there's a very interesting line which has been coined these days, that the next gen, or in very near future, we won't be competing with AI. We would be competing with people who know how to use AI. And so the average output from an average person who can probably uh, use the AI and machines to do the grunt work so that they can put their inputs where it deserves. I think that's how you will see the future of work happening. Some of it is already happening. I mean, like you said about English, think about it. At one point in time, there was this one guy in the every office who used to be expert in putting up the presentations. The only name to fame and the kind of pathway to a CEO office for this one gentleman used to be because of he can pick up the you can rattle something out, and this guy will be able to pull out videos from here, pictures from here, and put it in a nice presentation. Okay, today all of us can make decent presentations if we know basics. PowerPoint has become so easy. Excel has, and I'm picking up very simplest of the things to the most complex things you talk about. I mean, think about it. At one point in time, this creation of a system architecture was such a great thing because of you, you knew Visio, or people were doing certifications around Microsoft, using the apps of Microsoft, saying that, oh, I can connect two apps and I can do XYZ, whatever it could be. Today it's MS projects. You don't really need a certification. It has become so easy. You can just go and type in on a Copilot and do that. So I think the average outcome or output will start to redefine itself. You will have people doing much more less grunt work and more creative work. And as Sanjay and you both mentioned very rightly, it's about bringing in that one differentiation which actually defines you. And that's where it brings into your entire theory of that, what am I good at, what I can also do, and what I do it because of I have to do it. So I think that larger part about I do it because of I have to do it can be outsourced, and what will define you is what I am good at. And that's where I think we all need to find our spaces, which is just one thing in which I can, even if I am in deep slumber in the midnight, if you wake me up, I will do it the way nobody else can around me. And that is what will make me employable. That is what will make me desirable at a workplace.
So, when I think of the average, Jesse, to in regards to your fundamental query, is that maybe 80 or 85 out of 100 people in a workplace who are busy doing a repeatable task, and there was a demand for that task, and they were getting paid for that, and that was good for them, and they were happy to do that, and they were going home with a paycheck, and that was it. The person who thinks that, okay, I got everything, but I don't have this one piece, and now thanks to AI I can reach out and plug that little gap and raise my level, is already a little more than average, because even to have that motivation or the drive to understand that that's my gap and I can do this piece is not average. It's a little beyond that. And we're what worries me is about this whole large chunk of the real average, where for the most number of decades or maybe more, it was okay to know that one thing, keep coming morning every day, do it, go back every month and pick up a check and run your life. And that is just going to be displaced. And that average is a tough one. Even to, like I think somebody mentioned, it's about writing simple English prompts. But why is prompt engineering a thing? Because it's English, but it's still not so easy for everyone, right? I mean, the early people who dabble in chat GPT come back and say, oh no, it never gave me a good answer, I don't think it works. It's because they didn't take that effort on the prompt. I mean, so it's like that. It is still going to require a little effort, and if you can do that, sure. Obviously, you're going to get value out of this. You're muted, Jesse.
Jesse, you have muted yourself.
I am very sorry. I have a dog that is barking in the background. I'm going
You can
to
use
go to
AI to filter
questions.
out the noise.
I have two dogs. Okay, so you shut up one, and if I use AI, it's going to shut up the whole household. Um, but if I were to kind of summarize, I think what you're saying is trust and empathy are going to be big differentiators, but it's also a return of the generalist. If you do only one thing and you work to a process, then AI can pretty much do the same thing. But if you do many things and you need AI help for one thing, then more likely that you will have a role in the future. So I hear that. Um, I personally also feel that um, if you have domain knowledge, that's much more kind of hard to replicate today. So, because the horizontal bits can easily be replicated. So, I might know everything there is to know about banking, then I could start using these tools to put a new way of doing banking in place, for example. Or if I do SEO, SEO can be automated, but I really should know what a banking customer wants. And I should really start investing in intent and research in that space. So I think what we're hearing today is it's awesome. We're at the cusp of something very exciting. It's already in play. And if you follow a standard process for your job, then you do need to think twice about that longevity of the said job. So, with that, I'm going to post the first question, which is what is the AI toolkit that we're using in our day to day? Either of you are welcome to address that one.
So, in our kind of work, I think, of course, ChatGPT is, and its variants, whether it's Gemini, Bard, all those things, basically text querying, text response is definitely one. The graphic image tools, the Mid Journeys, and again, the variants of those are regularly being used. Then there are tools which, enable you to, say, take an hour long YouTube video and summarize it, and get the extract out of it. There's a lot of research. I mean, when you're doing customer insights, so you got some documents, large PDFs. You just don't have time to read 40-page PDF, but you want the gist and summary of it. It's just like that. You get those. So some of those are used reasonably extensively. There are tools which put automated voice on video. So we're creating videos with like literally automated humanoid, or human, not humanoid also. It's actually a human face, lip syncing with the text, which is all automated and created. Very standard requirement for a lot of client work. So some of those are very regularly used. I may not always know the name. I don't use them myself. The team uses it, but I know that these are the kind of tools which are used most extensively. And on the tech side, yes, there's the co-pilots and tools of those kinds are also being used very regularly.
Yeah. About what Sanjay said, I think some of the tools which are on underwriting, on understanding the consumer behavior, on recommendation engines, and on being able to make sense of data, I think data analytics tool is what we are being using very extensively. I mean, one side is, as I said, one is the AI for public, one is the AI for the enterprise. So I mean, public AI is what you do in terms of creation or of content creation, connection with consumers and production and stuff like that. The second is for the servicing. So I mean, whether it is the bots, whether it is being able to understand, even for example, in my collections today, I use a tool to be able to predict who to call. Okay, and we are being able to fix while a gentleman is on the phone. Okay, we are able to predict whether the person, how long will the call take to kind of close. So things like that, I think those are interesting things which we are dabbling with.
So there's a question on how much quality improvement are you actually seeing with the use of AI tools? And how much of this improvement is actually helping people to be more creative?
I think, Jesse, as Sanjay very rightly mentioned, I mean, think about it. Earlier, for example, if I created a video, and I also use it for a lot of video production for various languages. If I created a video and was to get it only translated and then dubbed again and X Y Z, it would have costed at least 10 times more. Today, at a say about a 5K INR, you can create good 10 minutes of a video which is as humanly close as possible. I mean, you won't be able to. So it's 10x less on my on basic. I mean, my content team tells that no more they have a writer's block because of you can go and you can research. So what used to be search on Google became search on YouTube to Amazon. Now it is no more search on any of these. It has become search on one of the GPDs where it is happening. For a designer, what used to be brief earlier, and this is the funniest. My designers are kind of pissed on me for that because of earlier I used to write a brief which was like 3 pages and they will come back. So if I have asked black, it will be everything but black. Now what I do is I write 3 lines brief, put it on my one of the GPDs, generate a design which will have all wrong English, everything here and there. But because of I have put in my brand toolkit and kind of trained it, it'll give me near possible of what I am imagining. And then I'll give it to them and say, this is where it is. I need these 5 changes, done with it. So what I would probably invest 5 times uh, back and forth. Now it is done in once. Agencies are happy, my partners are happy, my designers, I don't know if they're happy or not. But yeah, so it does improves. Yeah, Sanjay, sorry.
I think in many ways it's catalyzing the next thought. So when we do secondary research for a client, earlier you have a template of the questions you ask, and somebody else does the actual research, plugs it into the template, and gives it back. But when you sit with something like Perplexity, not only does it give you the answers pretty much in real time, it also says, and would you also like to ask these questions? Was actually educating you, saying, dude, you forgot about this really important question over there. So you're kind of like getting a world class co pilot, and that's a great phrase you're using, to kind of make sure that you are as creative as you can be. And which, again, in the early days of the call center, one of the issues people had was that because people were being monitored for the amount of time spent with the customer, even though you had virtual, you had everything, they were not allowed to talk. It was like, you were being appraised on 5 minutes or 30 minutes. And now, of course, they changed it to saying that happy customer is better. So if you want to talk for 20 minutes, you can. But when we also go the process way, even if AI is telling you that you ought to be doing more, you could be researching more, the organization has to empower the person to say that, look, do the best possible job. Don't just take your old job and do it faster. And I think that's actually a big conflict that's going to arise when people say, "Oh, but I finished my work. I'm going home. I'm done." But that's not really what's expected. You wanted to do a great deal more. Um, and I'm going to ask you another question, which is, from marketing POV, what are the best Gen AI things to learn?
That's an interesting question. Sanjay, you want to go first?
Um, from a marketing, what are the best things in Gen AI to learn and from where? I think it's again, let's ask from a answer from a first principle kind of a perspective, that what is it that we're doing in marketing, and in everything that we're doing, whether it's consumer insights, whether it's market research, whether it's actual communication, all of them are like the base, and all of those have ways and means to become honed, and become richer in terms of what you can do using AI tools. So literally, the core of what you're doing as a marketer is not changing, and each of the areas, each of the sub areas of your marketing's work or effort has areas, or has tools, or has methods, processes, which will just make it better in terms of qualitative work, as well as efficient in terms of speeds. So depending on what all you want to address, I mean, it could be from data and analytics, it could be from media, it could be from uh, creative communication, research, everything. All of them have fabulous opportunities, or existing opportunities and the tools already there. Or you can also, of course, figure, like, okay, this is a problem that I have. Can I use a combination of these tools to deliver my end goal? I pretty much believe that you'll find some answers there. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that addresses the question, but I would look at it like, I think it's more of a first principle response.
Yeah. So I do something even more funnier with this. Okay. So one of the things which somebody said, that as a marketer you should be able to hold two opposite thoughts together, and your both the arguments for and against should be as equal. But as humans, that's not always possible. So what I do a lot of times is pick up a thought, and like, so, and this is something which you can do on GPT very easily. I mean, I have a GPT-4, you can just subscribe to it. It's very, very cheap. And then simple thing is, train your own bot. So for example, this entire chat, what I will do is I'll pick it up and create a transcript and give it to GPT saying, read this, this is what I've said. It will keep updating itself. And then I will ask him the question. I'll ask the GPT the question, if for example, if I have to do, say, a campaign, like the last campaign we were trying to create, I asked GPT that, think like Ashish, go through all the past things, comment on this one thing. And 80% of it was like I would have said, and some of it came out from very, very early thoughts when I had probably joined the organization which I had created. And it empowered because of I was using a note taker.ai. So I was doing note taker. So every meeting it was taking notes. And today it is so easy. If you are in a meeting, just switch on note taker. It'll not only take notes, it'll create MOMs, it'll create task list and immediately sync to your calendar and say, these are 10 things you need to do. So is it 100% right? Not really. It's not 100% right. But 80, 85, 90% is good enough at that point in time, because of you exactly know what you have said. It might say, half of the times earlier it used to write, add an H to my name. And sometimes because of that, the email was blocked. Because of, rather than Ashish, it was Hashish. And that was a word. But all I'm trying to say, I mean, as marketers, a lot of our time goes in corrections. So today, if somebody sends me a script, I don't need to really read it. I just give it and say, find grammatical errors. Just 3 lines. Add, it'll find itself. You don't
So,
need to focus.
I'm because we're really short on that. I'm actually going to say that, but this is, where, um, so I was worried, like when I crossed 25 years of work ex, it's like, oh my God, I'm a dinosaur. What am I going to do? But then you also realize that we know what we're supposed to be looking for, right? So you know that you should be looking for grammar errors in this. You should also be looking for the mismatch pattern. because ChatGPT sometimes lies, right? So you have the experience or the domain knowledge to say that doesn't sound possible. Let's go and check if this is really true. Or you know that it tells you something and it's just not going to happen, or you know that that finger might be missing, so you start looking for it. Like there was this whole thing about the Princess Catherine Kate Middleton's Photoshop thing, right? And I wondered, why was there such a fuss? It's a hand, I mean, who cares? And then, oh, it's her ring finger, and she's not wearing her wedding ring. So that's a cultural context, right? You keep telling me she's fudged her finger, it means nothing to me. But if you know that that's where you wear your wedding ring, aha, then there is a story and it all falls into place. So I think what we need is for people to kind of have the human experience and experience as much as possible, and then also have the domain knowledge that they know what they're looking for. Because I, the bot does what you tell it to do, and it does it how you tell it to do it, but it doesn't really know why it should be doing something. And that's where the human layer, currently at least, is still valuable to all of us. So I'm going to wrap up with a last question, which is a very good question on how do we make sure that we continue to be ethical and responsible. And I want to comment that marketers are not necessarily famous for this. We do stupid things and then backtrack because customer backlash. So with or without AI, this is always a challenge. So personal experience, what are you guys doing about it?
No, I would say, while all these tools are at our disposal, I mean, like you mentioned about ChatGPT and the hallucinations and all that. I mean, you don't just pick something and just reproduce. If that's the lazy way to get around to using these tools, there's every chance that you could be going wrong. You could be unethical, you could be making mistakes, you could be hurting your brands, etc. So at the outset, there are certain sort of standards or certain process issues that need to be put in place. For us, I mean, thanks to being part of a large global network, there are a lot of controls and constraints which are already sort of part of our work approach. So we can't just take something and put it out. All the legal ownership of an image and all these things are always concerns. That said, there is ample utilization or ample efficiency which you can still derive. So it's a question of finding that balance. Do the right thing, do something which is above board, and anything which seems to be on the gray zone, better to not proceed, wait out, see if there's clarity, whether it's in terms of regulation, whether it's in terms of some legal opinions which emerge. You don't want to be the first one to be on the edge, and especially have your brand get hurt because you took that chance. And moreover, I think it's also the right thing. So there is this whole one aspect of copyright and legality and all that, right? So I'm going to take maybe 30-40 seconds on this. When is there uh, like a copyright matter, or rather where there is value, is that there is a certain unique character of the way you've written something or where you've rendered something. So there is a uniqueness, and which is differentiated, and because of which it's your right, it's your value. When the first nail was handcrafted and made, and that had value, and then it got automated and it started getting produced in a factory, and suddenly that value was gone. Now, is that analogy relevant here? That okay, you created this verse, you created this poetry, and it was yours, it was unique, and suddenly using yours and similar other verses, if a machine can find its way to create something which resembles that, is it the same thing, when that handcrafted nail versus machine produced nail, and suddenly the drop in value? So does it, like, is this a violation of your original copyright now that there is a very similar look-alike? I don't know. I think these are all questions which I don't have any answer for. But I think that's the space we are getting into in some sense, that hey, if it's not unique, if it's easy to replicate, why is there a value to it? It's that kind of a scenario. So
So, Ashish, for your last question, sorry, we are, I'm
no,
trying to close.
I was done.
Um,
I was just about.
yeah, I'm going to give you the last question, which I think is the second part of the question is, do you think that, the launch of Sora and similar tools are going to put marketers, particularly smaller ones, are they going to become redundant?
I think Jesse, we answered it earlier itself. I think what these tools do to, like Sanjay said earlier, if you are not having a unique value proposition, whether as an individual or as a professional bringing to the work, I mean, these tools will certainly take it away. Okay, they'll make en masse work very, very simple. So you need to define your value ecosystem, your value hierarchy, and if you are good at doing some three four things, these tools will empower you to do better, and they will raise the bar. I don't think so that these tools itself, Sora itself, will not create video. Sora itself will not do ideation. Sora does not know which customer to serve what. It won't know whether, I mean, in a South Indian to a North Indian to a East Indian or to somebody sitting out in Europe. Okay, same brand, how do you represent it differently? Somebody would require, so what you do today, the grunt work, you can train it to do the grunt work, and you can do much more imaginative work. I think that's where it is.
So, Sanjay, I have a question which is sort of related. You said that you don't want to be the at the edge of testing the ethics of things. Like a lot of stuff is unknown. So, for example, now I think Google's got a fine to pay because clearly they whacked news content to build their language models. Um, but I do wonder because the larger companies, yes, they have a lot to lose, so maybe you don't want to take the risk. But if I was a small hotshot company today, I would probably have to consider taking some gambles. And I wouldn't necessarily say you had to break the law, but there is so much of ambiguity, so much of gray space today that the next leaders might come because they kind of fudged and they might go the way of Napster, but they may not. They may go the way of Google. So that I mean, so when you say smaller marketing agencies, I don't know. Maybe they would take the risks that others don't. What
Yeah,
do you think?
actually, when that question came, I thought, in fact, the other way around. I think it's the smaller ones who will be probably the edgier ones who will take those risks. They will take those chances and probably also have less to lose. I mean, even if you sort of take them to the courts, I mean, there's only so much you can ask for, whereas, the larger ones have a bigger liability, listed companies and whatnot. And in fact, it's in that experimentation, or if it's in being edgy, that interesting new things happen. I mean, Napster, like you mentioned, was a classic case. I mean, maybe a large music company would have never got down to that path of, streaming or, downloading a tune or a song. It took a startup, it took up that. And, with all the court, work that, legal fights that they had, today it's default. I mean, that's how we consume music. So it needed that edgy startup to get there, and I think and that's where innovation will come here as well.
Okay, and okay, I keep saying this is my last question, but this is positively my last question. I could not let it go. This one is, what happens when AI starts training itself and there is no new content? It is all AI generated. What I consider blah, because a lot of it is blah content with no POV. What happens when it starts feeding itself? So I'm just going to answer this myself really quickly. I actually think that in a lot of situations, AI is going to bypass a human and say, why don't I just talk to the other AI that is making the decisions, right? We don't need to translate all this machine data to humanese. We're probably going to have an app which controls our buying based on some set parameters. So you don't actually need to get out and, trouble our pretty little heads with all this stuff. And we would go back to a golden era where we sit and paint and write poetry and stuff like that. Utopia is coming. So, on this happy note, I would like to thank Ashish and Sanjay. Thank you so much. I think it's been a very enjoyable 1 hour, and we had around 200 people for company. So, it's a great way to, celebrate the midweek. Thanks, everybody, and good night, good morning, wherever you are. Thanks so much, and we hope to see you another Wednesday as well.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Jesse and Ashish. It was
Thanks.
fun. I enjoyed it. And thanks for everyone for tuning in. Loved it.
Thanks, guys. Yeah.